We are back for our daily PushTalk. Sorry for the lateness today, everybody. We're having a little technical issues. Today I have with me, I would say two very important people, but I would be lying to myself. I'm just joking. So today I have with me, all the way to it looks like my right today. Well, my right. The furthest right, we have Taylor. Taylor, give everybody a wave. Hey, it's her first time, so she's a little nervy. And of course, we have Camille, who was on last week with us, talking about second chances. So Camille, give everybody a little wave. Hey. How you doing? So welcome back. Today we're going to be on for about 30 minutes or so, but we're going to talk about some of the things that are going on, popular things that are going on in the community, some of the things that are going on. Today we're going to be on for about 30 minutes. Sorry, some of the things that are going on right now in the world: the crazy, the good, the bad, the ugly. Some conversations everybody won't be a part of because they just won't. But some, all of us will be a part of. So I would be remiss. I feel so short in this chair. Sorry. There we go. First off, I want to point out to remind everybody that if you're a pastor, if you're any kind of leader, we're inviting you out on August 13th to Tabernacle International Church. We have a promo video that will be going out this week, hopefully. With Apostle Fritz Musser and Pastor Lisa Musser will be hosting us, but we'll be at Tabernacle International Church on August 13th from the hours of 6 p.m. until the Spirit leads us to go. But we'll be working with a whole bunch of different spiritual leaders in the community to kind of talk about that. And let's start there. In all reality, I want to ask them first, and I'll probably give my opinion afterwards. Why do you guys feel like it's important that the spiritual community needs to play a bigger role when it comes to social injustice and voter suppression, and even ex offender rehabilitation? Let me start here. Do you guys go to church every Sunday, roughly? Okay, do you guys believe in God? Okay, yes, no, yes, okay. All right. So do you feel like the spiritual community, from your perspective, has played a big enough role? Don't all jump in at the same time.
I would say no. I would say no, because I think more it's been the overall just Black community kind of speaking up on it, not really like in the churches.
The Black community,
like as far as like I would say Black like youth, because I know even like at my university and other universities that are in the system of Georgia, like they would have protests and stuff on campus. So like I've seen more of that from youth than as far as like older generations of like really getting out there, really spreading the word, really like making noise.
Really interesting that you said that. How old are you?
22.
22. So would you say it's interesting how you put like the church has not been as involved as they should, but youth have been involved. Why is it that you separate the church from youth? Out of curiosity, it was just interesting to me.
Well, I would say most of my peers that I know don't really like go to church that often, but like they'll host different things and different protests and even speak with other like leaders and stuff like that, but it's not really like church based, like, oh, come to my church because they're hosting XYZ. Like,
right.
They chose to host something.
Camille?
I think they could play a better part. More.
From what perspective?
I feel like it all starts with the youth, and we got to get them involved and talk to them, and who better to talk to them than their pastors, their church affiliation, however it may be.
Well, but some, as she said, most of them are not going to church. So so this is interesting to me. I was on a conversation maybe about a week and a half ago. Oh no, it's been longer than that. I'm just really underestimating it. It's been about a month and a half ago. But we're having a discussion with a group of leaders, and one of the leaders said that the problem that he had, and this is a pastor who basically said, and I'm paraphrasing without saying his name, his or her name, they stated that the problem that they had was that the church was not involved enough, because when, like, I think there was and I don't know about this in particular, but he was telling a story about how there was a protest going on and Jesse Jackson kind of showed up, and the young people were like, we don't need you here, kind of deal. And I thought that was so interesting that was being said, because most revolutions, when it comes to social injustice, when it comes to voter suppression, was started like in the church. Martin Luther King in the church. I mean, Malcolm X, even though it wasn't per se the Christian church we know it, it was started through religion, right? So many of these movements, definitely in the black culture, was started by people who were faith-based on some kind of level. And it's interesting to hear when people say like that faith-based community is not doing enough. Like, so what more would you like to see them do?
They're gonna have to get outside the church doors, I believe, and get out into the community and talk to these youth people and let them know, choices. I keep going back to that word, choices. It's all about the choices we make, and we just got to make better choices, and we just got to make better choices.
And for you, because you're the youngest person at the round table today.
I would say I guess more even I'm seeing it coming from my school. You see different orgs posting stuff, but as far as the religious orgs, they might post something like "We stand with you," but that's it. But it's other orgs that are random things, even me as AKA, we did a march, we host things, but it's it needs to be more than just a post and little basic stuff. Really host something and make it open to everybody, not just here's just our members. Make it really be show up, come with us, let's really raise some motion about it.
So would you guys say that the church is not doing enough, or the churches are not publicized, or are not doing good at publicizing what they are doing? Cause I'll give you an example. We were just in DC a month ago, and we went to DC a month ago. It was for anybody to come. The group that we went with, they actually funded a bus to leave from DeKalb to take people to DC for free if you wanted to go. Not a lot of young people was on that bus, right? So the question is it that they're not doing it, or they just are not publicizing? Are they not using your social media enough? Are they not TikToking and Instagramming and Facebook and I sound really old by even calling it all these things, but still, are they not reaching out to you guys via social media well enough?
I would say maybe social media, because social media is kind of life now. That's kind of how you spread the word about things. But I think also there is some reservations between church and youth. So I think also like you said, that some young people didn't want to go. There is kind of some stipulations where some youth don't want to associate themselves with the church. They'll say, "Oh, I'm Christian, but I don't attend church," because there is some risk there. So I think that's also an issue too, that some people don't want to participate in the church. But I also just know even I said, just seeing on campus and not seeing a lot of religious orgs kind of say something about it. You guys post when you guys have little get-togethers and Wednesday night stuff, but it's when as far as planning an event like that where y'all just have to walk around, it's there was nothing there.
It was surprising to me when I was in DC. It was a lot of churches, multi-racial churches, that in front of their churches had Black Lives Matter. And they had posters up, and being in Georgia, you don't really see that a lot. Even black churches don't really have those kind of things up. And part of this goes back, I think the conversation we had when we met with the pastors in Gwinnett was very interesting, because I don't think a lot of them have figured out how to deal with these issues without being controversial because of the fear of losing people. Should religion, should faith be bigger than people?
No, it shouldn't.
I feel you should stand for what you want to stand for and not worry about who's going to lose.
I would say it should be bigger than people. Why? Because sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. So if you go based upon what people want to hear, sometimes you're going to lie to people because you're giving them what they want to hear versus what's right? So it should be bigger than people. I think social injustice is bigger than one person. It's bigger than people, right? It's bigger than, when I say that, and don't take this the wrong way, even when I say it's bigger than George Floyd, social justice didn't just end when we got the conviction against George Floyd. It's bigger than George Floyd, because obviously it's bigger than George Floyd, because 24 hours after he got sentenced, a black man got killed. 2 to 3 weeks ago, there was a white young man killed in, I think, Alabama by a police officer. So that's what I mean by it's big. The movement is bigger than just one specific person or people. And I think that a big part of what's going on with the church is that we're trying to satisfy people so much that we're missing out on just being honest and telling the truth. And even if it costs us to lose everything, when I say everything, our building, our church members, I think we have obligation to tell the truth. And it's not right to see somebody sit on a person's neck, or for somebody to say, "Hey, I can't breathe," and you keep them in a chokehold, or for police to bust into the wrong home and nobody's held accountable for shooting the people who were in that home, but they're held accountable for shooting into the neighbor's house. You know what I'm saying? Like, all those things are crazy to me, but I get it. I mean, from somebody being in the spiritual community, I do feel like we've been too quiet. I do feel like we're not standing up enough. I do feel like I think I was telling this story the other day about Vernon Jones. Vernon Jones, his last sermon, literally at I forgot the name of the church in Alabama, but his last sermon, literally, he said to the people, he said, if you see your brother getting killed in the street and you don't say anything about it, you're just as guilty as the person who killed them, right? And that metaphor, I think we've lost that because we're so caught up in wanting to keep our churches and wanting to keep people happy and wanting to keep the tithes coming in that we forget that faith doesn't work like that. Faith works off the unseen. So it's trusting God even when we don't see the outcome of what it's going to be. So, I mean, and to support my brothers and sisters out there who are given that task, I will also say too that truth is not 50%, right? So we can't talk about some of the things, but not really be willing to deal with all of the things, right? So we'll go and to continue to preach the word, but we don't want to talk about, like, when we have a member in our church, and there's churches who have done this, but we have a member in our church who's been killed by a police officer, been killed in an unjust way, or whatever the case may be. We don't want to deal with that topic, but we'll go on and talk about, hey, the importance of tithing, but we just don't want to deal with the fact that a young black, white, Hispanic, or Asian man or woman got killed in our own congregation. So I just think that as the old people used to always say, the truth shall set you free. The truth shall set you free.
They're scared too.
Yeah, they're scared. But then too, it's interesting that Taylor brought up the point that we haven't done enough to really keep the youth involved or to keep their attention. That's pretty interesting. Or maybe that's just Taylor and group.
No, because they're not willing to come down to where they are. Do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When I say that, where older people, they are stuck in their ways. Younger people, you got to come down to them in order for them to understand what's going on. So I think that's a lot of the issue.
It's fun. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, it's just, I know me personally, especially like with the older generation, like, I know it can get kind of tiring if you walk to church and someone's like, the youth is doing this and listening to this and wearing this and out here, but it's kind of like, okay, you're kind of demeaning everything that's going on in the youth population. And yeah, it might be wrong in your eyes, but it's kind of like somebody doesn't want to return back to that if all you do is kind of discussing what somebody's doing wrong.
But don't you think there has to be respect for the institution? A respect for the institution. I get what you're saying, right? I totally get what you're saying. Like, and trust me, a lot of churches I've been a part of are super religious from the perspective that a woman needs to wear a certain thing, right? A woman if they have a dress on, need to put like the whole towel thing or the cloth thing in front of them so that they're not being a temptation. And I get that, right? But don't you think there's a respect for the institution? I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were talking about Congress and your Senate, and they were saying, like, if it was my dream, like all the old people, anybody 70 and over would just go right now and let Congress be taken over by younger people, right? And my perception of that was a little different. Like, I think they all need to go. There needs to be term limits. But at the same time, I think that the knowledge that they have is important, right? I think it's important that if I was to get elected right now today, to be able to spend a year or 2 years with a John Lewis to learn what the institution stands for, how the institution works, before John Lewis just leaves me. Like, I don't want to be coming in and John Lewis is going out, if that makes sense, right? Because I come in stupid is the term I'm going to use, right? Because I don't know how the institution works. Just because I get elected into office doesn't mean I understand the gravity of the office in which I serve in. And I get what you're saying, but do you think that, like, I was in Paris, right? And one of the things I found interesting when I went to go to Notre Dame is the kids who were in the church were totally different than these kids over here, right? There was not a cell phone, there was not a tablet. Like, they literally sat there, and even though, they probably was bored out their mind, they sat there and they respected the institution. They respected the gravity of where they were at. And I get what you're saying, but let's talk. This is real talk, push talk, right?
Okay, so I've been to white church, I've been to black church, I've been to we accept everybody church. And I feel like,
do me a favor, bring the mic close to your mouth.
Oh. And I've been to we accept everybody church. And I feel like the churches where it's kind of like we accept everybody, like come in jeans, come as you are, like those are kind of like the realer churches, because it's kind of like, you know, we're here just to kind of give you this word and give you this message. And the black churches, when it's like come in your best head to toe, like my grandma, she's a part of a black church where it's like, you know, they're wearing the hats and everything and really coming fully dressed. But it's like very pretentious where, like, you know, if me and my mom go, we're kind of like, we feel like the outskirts, like they're looking at us like you're dressed too plainly, like this and the third. And so I just feel like, yes, you should respect the institution, but also you need to kind of modernize it and understand that that used to be the standard, but it's to get the youth involved and get the youth in the church, like we're not going to come like that. We're not going to come, you know, how it used to be.
With the hat on.
Yeah, with the full dress and Sunday fit. And then even overall in church, like I know some people just don't like going to black churches because it's just long. Like some people are just like, I just get bored and tired. Like I just feel like modern church, like even when me and my mom tried modern church, we knew in an hour and a half we would be going home. So it's like being 4 or 5 hours in the church, even longer, having to walk around, speak to everybody, like that could just, after a while, you're just like every week, like you kind of just getting tired of it.
You have nothing to add to that? No, from an older person. I mean, you grew up in a different generation than we did.
Yeah, well, I grew up where you went to church and it was long. And you went to church a couple of times a day, not just once. But I do understand where she's coming from, because you got to bring the youth in somehow, and that's not doing it. You got to modernize it.
But I mean, for and once again,
change with the times.
But I'm just playing devil's advocate. So for those who are in ministry who say, like, the same youth who say we need to cut back on service will go spend from 11 o'clock in the morning at night till 4 o'clock in the morning at a club or at a bar and just hang out like all night and don't mind being there that long. Why do we need to modernize the way we do things? You know what I'm saying? From their perspective. I'm just saying from their perspective, because I hear older people say this all the time. Like, why do we need to modernize the way we do things when things that you guys enjoy, and I say you guys, us, that we enjoy, we can spend all day on it, right? But churches is one of those places where, like you said, people just find it boring. I mean, why? Like,
I would say, like, as far as youth, because it's kind of like, you know, we out from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., we have our phones, we have our friends, we can speak this and the third. If you're in church, I'm not saying church needs to be quick, but, you know, if it's a good message, I can understand you being long-winded, but it's like, even me, if I go off, I'm out for a long time, I get kind of, my social meter dies. So I'm like, if I'm in church, and it's like, you know, we sing, we go through the word, you sing again, you talk more, it's like, at some point in time, it's like, okay, like, we've heard enough. Like, we can call it quits now.
I hear you. I hear you, but I also see it from both perspectives, because I think that a person never really recognizes the toll that something takes on them until they've actually experienced it themselves. So the perception, with that being said, like, until you've been in somebody's pulpit and you're the one who's responsible for preaching or singing or leading praise and worship, then it's like something totally different. Like, I remember I used to despise when people used to be on praise and worship. Like, oh my God, why do you have to sit here and sing this song over? Didn't we just hear them sing this song like over and over? Why are they going back to this song? Oh my God, they want to slow the same song down. Now they want to go back and sing the song. And then when I started, like, I joined the praise and worship team and I started singing on it, a song could really like hit. And it's different when you're involved in it, right? It can really hit you, and you really sing out there. You think that you don't the song, but and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna stay here in the moment, right? The moment is bigger than me, and I'll be honest with you too. Even from a perspective of singing on somebody's praise and worship or preaching to people, it's difficult. Definitely when you looking at people's eyes and they looking at you like, Pastor, like, shut up, be quiet. I mean, because you're trying to, in the circle, we'll say like you're trying to preach the hell out of people, right? And you're giving your all to people. But I mean, there are some places I will agree, right, that it's just long way. Like, they talk on and on and on. It makes no sense what we're talking about. And I do get that. I'm not a fan of one of those people. I'm not a fan of when we raise money and I'm spending an hour on trying to raise money. I am not a fan of it, because people are going to do what they want to do. And I think that the most cheerful of givers is one who, when they gave out of their heart, and not when you're sitting up there trying to be like, oh, we got $5 more in the room. I know we got, because when people get to giving out of that type of spirit, even though we may have gotten the goal of what we needed, I don't think it's going to be blessed, right? Because the Bible says the blessed person is a cheerful giver. So, I mean, church needs to be modernized. I agree. in a lot of different ways. I'm probably a lot more. What's the word I'm looking for? What's that word that begins with a P? Not conservative, but a lot more progressive when it comes to my views on churches. Like let me not like when it comes down to things like gay marriage and all this kind of stuff. My views are probably a lot more progressive from a spiritual standpoint. But at the same time, I think that a part of what's wrong with the church today, to be honest with you, is that we've tried to modernize ourselves too much.
But I think also like our generation, like I know like even my grandma, like that's all she knew. Like she knew being in church all day long, being in church throughout the week, Sunday school, this, that, and the third. Like me growing up, I didn't really go to church, and when we try to go to church, it's kind of just like, okay, this thing is long. And then now, especially, you have Zoom church, you have outside church, so it's kind of like now we have all these other different type of options, and you can kind of say like, okay, now if I try to return back to what used to be the norm, you're kind of like, okay, this is really long compared to like what it could be now.
Yeah. So the reality is that you guys know that if they really wanted to cut service back, they could.
They could, yeah. Like now like
social media has screwed us up, and they're never coming back. The kids are never coming back. That's crazy. That's interesting though. It's very interesting though. So I mean, the church still has room to grow. I mean, and I think that the moment that we as a church or we as people start to feel like we have no place to grow, then we kind of lost the whole generation, because we have places to grow. And once again, I think the church has tried to modernize itself a little bit too much. We've tried to adapt to like kids. You know, we have tablets. Some churches have tablets for kids and all this kind of. It's too much, right? I grew up in a generation where they didn't have like a children's church separated from regular church. Like you sat in regular church, and whatever pastor preached about today, whether you understood it or not, you stayed there. And if you decided to go to sleep, I remember plenty of times when even my mom and them used to go to church, but they put us on the church van, and we would be in church, and you would try to like lay down, the old lady on your road would just pop your leg or something like that, like wake up. I don't know what you got going on, but I mean, but it also taught me to have a totally different respect for the institution of it, right? And I understand too, like every house is different. Saying like that, like some churches may be one way. Like I have been to churches where you're talking about where an hour and a half, I know I'm out of that thing, and I'm cool. But I've also been in churches where I know it's going to take me 4 or 5 hours to get up out of there, and I mentally prepare myself before I get there. Now, I would say some places I have been, I completely will never go back again, because of the fact that it was like there's a verse in the Bible that says that sometimes we can speak so much that it becomes like a whole bunch of noise, right? And that's all it was just a whole bunch of noise. They was not talking about the Bible. They was talking about Jesus. They was talking about their personal life and their wife and all. And it's like, what does it have to do with what I'm here for? So I do get that, but weirdly enough, the church, I personally feel like the church has modernized itself too much, but modernized itself too much in places they should not have, and have not modernized themselves in places where they should have. Okay. If that makes sense. Yes. Right? So like I don't personally believe that Jesus would be, if he came back, that he would be spending all his day with the people who are in the church to save the saints, right? I see Jesus being out on the streets with the homeless. I see Jesus being out on the streets talking to the man who everybody has written off, right? I see Jesus going to the people's house who were not the most saved, but had a heart to want to just live life right, or to treat other people the way they want to be treated. And I don't think the church has modernized itself in that way, right? To where, and you brought up a very valid point, where we're too judgmental. I mean, we're looking at the way a person's dressed, but not looking at what that person comes in need of. And a lot of times you can learn a lot about a person by looking at the way they're dressed, or listen to the music they listen to. Very interesting. I don't know. Interesting. Shifting subjects. So the state of Georgia recently has, and this is one I think some of us are going to, but I'll be interested if you jump in to hear your opinion from a medical standpoint. So the state of Georgia just announced today, actually, that they're going to be choosing 8 or 6 companies that will be able to open up dispensaries in the state of Georgia for those who have medical marijuana cards. I think it's like 13,000 people. I myself being one of those 13,000. And I will have to admit, right, honestly, a year and a half ago, you could not sell me on marijuana. I thought it was one of the worst things a person could do. I thought it was a drug, and you should, if they do it, they should be locked up for it because it's illegal, right? And then once again, you learn from experiences. So I got sick, and I remember going to one of my doctor's offices one day, and I was like, I can't stop throwing up. She's like, she closed the door, and she's like, I didn't recommend this, but have you ever considered doing marijuana? I'm like, what? Marijuana? No, absolutely not. And from a spiritual standpoint, I just thought that it was, if I smoked, this moment I smoked, Jesus was gonna come down the street, slap me right down the hill. And from a physical standpoint, I just thought that was the wrong thing to do. But ultimately, my opinions have changed on it. And the article I was reading about the other day is that there was a guy out of Paulding County who literally, he basically said, like, listen, I just want to be able to walk into a place, put my money down, get my daughter her medication that she needs, and be able to go home and allow her to live, because his daughter faces seizure issues, right? Mm-hmm. Should marijuana be looked down upon when it's used for medical purposes?
No.
I see you can talk about that, but I'm just saying, for medical purposes reasons.
For medical purposes, I don't think it should be turned down.
No.
Well, why not, Camille?
Well, I suffer from, as I call it, a fake hip. I had a hip implant done, total hip replacement done about 7 years ago. And I was 420 friendly before then, just because I decided I wanted to be. But now it helps me with the pain. I don't take a bunch of pills. I don't want to take a bunch of pills that have me out of my head. I can't work, I can't drive. But if I am 420 friendly, I sleep at night. My body actually relaxes, where I'm not cramping up. When I get up in the morning, I'm going to be stiff regardless, because I haven't moved throughout the night. But it just helps me. It helps my body to relax. It helps.
So about some
the
people
anxiousness.
who will say, like, you can get the same effects through, like, CBD without having THC.
For me, that's not true.
Okay.
Because I've tried the CBD. It does relax me and it helps me sleep, but it's not the same. It doesn't take the pain away.
Right. And I'll have to say, because I know you want to stick as far away from this, but I'll have to say
I'll just say, like, medically, when you're talking about pills, like, I just know me personally, like, when I was studying for my MA and they were discussing the different classes and types of drugs and opiates, like, having medical marijuana will prevent that pill addiction, because a lot of people who have an injury, then they're on pills for months and months and months, get addicted, then once that prescription's gone, they're turning to heroin, they're turning to drugs that are kind of like those pills. So it's like, if we can prevent stronger addictions to, like, heroin, meth, other types of drugs, and you do medical marijuana and you stop with medical marijuana, I don't see an issue in that.
Yeah, and I would say this, like, and all jokes aside, like, personally, for me, medical marijuana assists me with, like, I have a huge problem with nauseousness. Anybody who works in this office knows I have a huge problem with nauseousness. And I will try everything prior to me converting over to medical marijuana. I would try everything. I would try tea. I do Zofran through mouth, and I do Zofran through IV. Like, I try everything. And I have two issues. Nauseousness is one huge one. Three, nauseousness is one huge one. Pain is another one. But my third one that I have an issue with is I can't eat. Like, I don't really, my body has been trained for so long to not eat that it depends on TPN versus me being able to just eat my mouth. And medical marijuana assists me with all that. And I, like you, have tried CBD, and it just didn't get me to where it needs to be. So I am a huge, kudos to Georgia for getting on board. Okay, I think that every state needs to at least legalize medical marijuana, definitely for people who have kids who have seizures, who have there's a whole bunch of different things that can be treated.
They didn't have that back then.
What?
That kind of a treatment for people with seizures. I wish they would have known it back when my daughter was young, because she was epileptic. She had childhood epilepsy, and she had seizures all the time. And there was nothing that we could do. She took medicine, of course, that they gave her, but I wish that I would have known back then that maybe that could have helped her.
But then the flip side is marijuana doesn't kill people. Opioids do, right? People overdose from opioids all the time, and we have to Narcan them all the time, right? If it can be used medically, I think it should be used medically. Now, to have the question or the debate about whether it should be something that's recreational, that's one I'm not getting involved in. That's one I'm not going to give my opinion on. But from a medical standpoint, I think that it has too many. And even recently, I was reading an article the other day, but it's like 2 weeks ago, about mushrooms and how people are starting to understand the impact that mushrooms have on people. And even I've never tried mushrooms. I've never tried it. But I think that any drug that can be, oh, your faces give everything away. But I think that any drug that we can find a way to medically use and help save a person's life without the impact of addiction, like opioids, like pain pills, like oxys and stuff like that, I think we should try those routes. I mean, the reality is that you don't hear about people losing their life to marijuana, right? You don't hear about people. Well, I've never heard about a person losing their life. Well, you can overdose on mushrooms again. I don't know.
Like mushrooms, the only part that I don't know that always gives me reservations about mushrooms is like, I just know me personally. Like my mom told me a story. She was like, someone tried this drug and then they were never the same after. So I've just heard those type of stories where like they might have had a bad trip, they might have had something wrong.
Right.
So I'm like, I feel like.
But again, if we make it medical, right, that means that it's somebody like a pharmacy that's or producer, right, that has been certified, approved by the FDA, that's actually producing this. So a lot of the problems that we do have, even marijuana, people buying street marijuana, is that people lace it, right? From the term, is that the right term? Lace it, yes. Adding stuff to it. Mm-hmm. And if I was able to go to a dispensary and be able to go to somebody and say, hey, these are the symptoms I'm having. Can you give me something that matches these symptoms, right? And I know that it's coming from like an approved vendor that the FDA is vetting. That eliminates all that, right? Now, does it kill a whole industry? Street industry, absolutely.
Now, I know though, like some people were scared when they were talking about like legalizing marijuana. They were scared that, kind of like those government conspiracies, they were scared that basically once it becomes legal, then the government's going to start putting like stuff into it and making it more like, so it can be mass produced, so they can put more little fillers or whatever they're going to put into it. You know, some people were like, even if it's legalized, like I'm still going to go to my guy or whatever. So I don't know once the tables start turning, how it's all going to work out.
Government will find a way. Mm-hmm. They'll find a way. I mean, you look at places like California, they've managed it really well. Like you can rarely, most people I know don't go to somebody on the street to buy their marijuana. But if you go to one of the marijuana stores, it is a line standing all the way outside. I was in Illinois, Chicago, and when I went, like there was a whole line of people, but they took me to like the outside. I was like, oh, we can show you where we grow it, and it was just so interesting, right? But again, I support medical marijuana. I support people using it for the purpose of medical reasons. If you have pain, if you can't eat, stuff like that, right? Cancer patients, I support it for that reason. I will not give an opinion on whether or not I support it recreationally or not. That's my personal opinion, but I think when it's being used for medical purposes, it should be used. And I give Georgia kudos because it took us long enough to get there, because like they say, we have roughly 13,000 people who have medical marijuana cards, and it does you no good in the state of Georgia, like, because there's no place you can go and buy medical marijuana. And I'm not, I'll leave it there. I'm not going into details. I'm not doing any of that, but I know that it does help. Helps a lot of people, and I'm one of those people. So, but kudos to the state of Georgia, and not everybody else needs to jump on board. So one of the things we talked about yesterday is that what was it yesterday or the day before? Probably the day before. We had Sean on the show. We had, was you on the show? Sydney. And James, and we talked about COVID and the COVID vaccine, right? You work with giving out vaccines. One of the things I found interesting that you had said to me a couple of weeks ago when you first started interning here is that you stated that people would come to you guys and try to buy the cards. Yeah. What? Really?
Yeah, like we'll have people who they'll either ask like, oh, can we take some of the cards and like have our family fill it out, and like the only thing you have to fill out is your name and your birthday. And like I've had people who've been like, I'll give you 200, I'll give you 400 just for the cards, so they can show like you're vaccinated but they're not really vaccinated, which I feel like is kind of piggyback off of getting rid of the mask mandate and everything. So you have people who out here who are saying they're vaccinated but not really vaccinated, and you can end up putting somebody at risk who might be autoimmune or who might have other health conditions. And so I feel like it turns into a bigger issue because, at our site we're not giving them out, but let's just say if somebody else tries to slide one and make a quick 200, like it turns into a big issue.
You're gonna protect your site, huh?
I know.
At your site, you're not giving them out.
I'm not giving them out because I feel like it just causes. Obviously, COVID is already such a massive issue, and you feel like you're just adding more fuel to the fire.
Have you been vaccinated?
Yeah.
Which vaccination did you get?
Pfizer.
Any reaction to it?
Just like obviously sore arm, and then I felt like I had a sore throat, but that was really it.
Camille, what about you? What do you think?
I'm vaccinated. Pfizer.
Do you think that it's important that people can get vaccinated?
Most definitely. I was not on the bandwagon. I had to be talked into it by you and my mom. But, for older people, like my grandmother, she's elderly. She's 88.
She took it? The vaccine?
Yes, she has taken the vaccine. She's fully vaccinated because we want to prolong her life, And we don't know what's going to take her out. We don't know if the COVID's going to take her out or if something else is going to take her out. But we just wanted to make sure that, she was vaccinated. So when we came along, and everyone in the family is vaccinated as well, because if you want to be around her, you don't have a choice, because we're trying to make sure that she stays on Earth as long as she possibly can. So.
Yeah, and now I'm a huge advocate of the vaccine. I'm telling you, there's a few things that keep me up at night, and one of them is literally COVID. I mean, every day I cut on my TV, like it seems like the first thing they're talking about is the Delta variant and how much more aggressive it is, and how people are getting sick, and how hospitals are filling back up again. And it seems like, again, and we talk about the church being organization that cares more about people per se, in the sense that they care about the opinions of people versus what's right for people. I think the government is the exact same way. Like a lot of government agencies, a lot of states are making rules based upon what popular opinion of the people in which they serve versus what we know to be right. I think in the state of Florida, the governor there has said that he's going to fight against any school district that tries to make wearing a mask a mandate. Right? What? Like, why would a mask? How does a mask violate your rights as a citizen of the United States? I'm confused.
I just know, like, when I was in Athens, when COVID first started, they had the curfew. So they were like, after 8 p.m., your business needs to be shut down. And Athens is a bar town. So all the bars, all of our revenue starts coming in 11 o'clock. So,
y'all couldn't get drunk earlier? You college students?
But, the governor is a UGA grad. So basically, those connects, all of a sudden, the curfew was lifted. But I'm like, you guys rather put people, because you're not going to wear a mask in the bar, you're drinking, so it's like you rather put these people at risk than go ahead and put your foot down and say, no, in order to help flatten the curve, we have a curfew date for a reason. And it's like, especially seeing people in the hospital and working with different physician assistants and doctors, and just seeing they're working 14, 15, 16-hour shifts because it's so many people. So I'm just like, I feel like wherever you can do your part with mask mandates, with curfew, it's like you need to do your part.
Camelia, just kind of give us the stink face on that one.
If you're vaccinated, I would say wear your mask, especially now since this new variant thing is out and we don't have a control over it. So just wear your mask. It's that simple. It's
if
not
you don't
hard.
have any, call us. We have a whole box full of them we can give out.
And just because you're vaccinated,
678-202-4320. Sorry.
Just because you're vaccinated does not mean that you cannot get COVID. You can still get COVID.
You just won't die from it.
Yeah, it's less symptoms, but you can still get the variant.
I have friends who have been fully vaccinated in the last couple of weeks who have caught COVID, and they're upset. But I was telling them the other day, you're upset that you got the vaccine and you caught COVID, but you're still alive. Mm-hmm. And from being someone who has seen people, I've literally been in the room with people as they died from COVID, I don't see how there's even a debate about it. You know what I'm saying? Too many people have taken the vaccine for us to be still talking about, when is that third eye going to come out? Or when are they going to start, shaking and all this kind of stuff? I took my vaccine months ago. And if they were to call and say, hey, Pfizer has a booster shot, I'm going to be one of the first ones in line to get my booster shot because, I want to prolong this little life as long as I have, right? And I think that, like I said earlier this week, COVID is one of those things that it doesn't just impact you. You know what I'm saying? There's certain viruses out there that you can be impacted by that just impacts you unless you decide to spread them in other ways. Mm-hmm. But COVID doesn't have to be one of those things. You know what I'm saying? So I don't believe, and it's funny that the same people who argue that wearing a mask is violating their rights, right, are the same people who will argue that passing out a bottle of water in an election line violates rights somehow. You know what I'm saying? Isn't that, can't I choose whether who I want to give water to in line, who is voting, if I'm not trying to impress upon them who to vote for? Mm-hmm. I don't get the concept that we have this mentality that we can tell somebody who they can marry. We can tell somebody how to vote or when to vote or where they can vote. We can tell somebody what you need in order to vote. But yet, hey, you know what? You don't have the right to tell nobody to wear a mask to prevent them from being a risk to somebody else. How does me giving out water in line risk somebody else's life? So is our government doing enough?
I feel like whatever's making their pockets, whoever in as far as political, they're kind of going with their ideas and not the common idea and the common good of actual citizens. It's like whatever they kind of want to see or whatever's going to make their pockets bigger. And then honestly, like I remember you guys said one day.
You break it, you buy it. So you talking about pockets.
I remember you guys said one day like they didn't expect the vaccine to be as effective as it was, and like now the investors and everything are getting mad. Like I feel like medically, like you should want things to like cure the stuff, and you should want things to be effective to eliminate things, but that's not what they kind of want to see. They want to see how much money they can make off of you.
But even those, I've heard the argument in churches like, God is a healer, he can heal anything. Listen, people are too stupid to come up with these kind of things, right? We are ignorant in the perspective that from a Christian standpoint, when I see a person come out with a vaccine that can help people from dying, I don't see that as being like a man-made thing. I see that as definitely being a God-created thing. Like when people come out with blood pressure medication, that's God-made. Like for me, in my opinion, like wisdom, the Bible says all wisdom comes from God, right? You can't have done that if God wasn't somewhere involved giving us the insight in order to be able to do it. So for those who are spiritual and be like, well, God ain't in the midst of that vaccine, read your Bible. All wisdom comes from God. So I mean, I just think that that's a myth too, and I think it's even crazier when people who are spiritual leaders would go and tell their congregants to on Zoom, because they're not in service live, would go tell their congregants on Zoom like, go get your shot. But then behind the scenes, if you ask them privately, have they gotten that shot? They'd be like, oh, no, I'm good for right now. Until I'm gonna give y'all 6 months down the road and see how y'all react 6 months in. And I feel great. How have you been feeling? I mean, I feel great from the perspective that this shot has not caused me any issues.
I haven't had any issues from the shot.
You?
I'm good, yeah.
You good? And you shoot people, you dose people up every day.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I'm not gonna say, I think the biggest thing as far as like medically that I've seen is people will psych themselves up before. So like, and mind you, like our place is a drive-through. So if they psych themselves up before, there's times where as soon as you put the needle in, they pass out, and then they'll come to and be like, "Oh, like it's done." Yeah.
And it was quick. I mean, when I did mine at Delta, the museum, I was in and out. I was like, "Okay, go ahead and give me the shot." She's like, "It's already done." I'm like, "Really?"
Yeah, it's really quick.
Yeah. So I mean, I
did the drive-through at
Delta.
Yeah, did the drive-through for the first one. Second one I went to CVS.
Pfizer still?
Yeah, still Pfizer.
Yeah. I just think everybody should be vaccinated. I think that even if you're vaccinated, you still need to wear a mask. And I think definitely with the Delta variant, we have to be so much more careful and understand that it doesn't just impact us. And it goes back to this whole metaphor. We over here in the United States are blessed to have, at first the conversation was, will we have enough vaccines? We have more than enough vaccines. In fact, I was reading an article that some vaccines are actually going bad because people are not getting the shot. And other countries are begging us for vaccines. So again, like the old people used to always say, you never miss your well until your water run dry. Mm-hmm. You better get it while it's here. And have you guys seen a decrease in people coming to get the vaccine?
Yeah, it's to the point where, because, there's two sides. So there's like COVID testing, then there's vaccination side. But it's to the point where we went from having like 5 or 6 vaccinated to now only like 1 person vaccinated because the volume is so low. And like you said, like there's days where we have vials, and because they have such a short time on it, and once we take it out of the freezer, we have to throw it away.
So have you guys seen an increase in people coming to get tested for COVID?
Yeah, it's definitely increased, especially as soon as, now the news is talking about the Delta variant. Then obviously travel purposes, but we've seen an increase in positives. We've seen an increase in just overall testing. And then even with the Delta variant, our manager had texted us yesterday, like they want us back with masks and face shields because like the chance, once you get Delta variant, it's like 3 times more like aggressive than normal COVID. But yeah, the numbers, because when COVID first hit, we were seeing like 1,700 people a day. Like it was something normal. And then now, like, we kind of dwindled down to under 100. Then we're getting now back up to like 140, 150, 160. So we're like, definitely when school starts back, it's going to definitely start keep rising up again. Yeah,
that's why I support even schools that want to make it mandatory for kids to wear masks. Because even though kids may not feel the same impact, they can carry COVID and bring it home to their grandma or me. Heck, I don't want to catch COVID again. Leave the COVID alone. So interesting. So just to recap some of the things we talked about today, we talked about the role that the church plays in when it comes to social injustice, voter suppression, and ex-offender rehabilitation, and are we doing enough? We also spoke about medical marijuana and the benefits of it on both sides. And then people, listen, go out, please, go out and get your COVID shot. Wear your mask, wipe your hands off. Heck, when we're done with here, we fun to wipe this whole table down and every mic that we use. So we need everybody to play their part. Again, I want to remind everybody, August 13th, we'll be at Tabernacle International Church for our One Accord event, hosted by Apostle Fritz Musser and his wife, his lovely wife, Pastor Lisa Musser. So we ask that anybody who's a church leader or your pastor come out and join us. We'll have a whole bunch of special guests out there, a few guest artists out there as well. So we're looking for everybody to join us August 13th at 6 p.m., not April, where we want to talk about being on one accord, and we want to continue to talk about the things that we need to do as a spiritual community to make sure that we are making a big impact on social injustice, voter suppression. So those are the two topics we'll be talking about. So if you want more information, please go to our website, www.black, that's BLACK, push.org. Even if you want to make a donation, we actually have started a donation campaign. You can go to our Facebook page, and the link is there to make a donation. So join us as we get ready to continue to push forward. And we thank you guys for tuning in today, and we'll be back. We'll be back on Monday, starting at 3:30. So every day, except for Sunday, we'll be on at 3:30. Every day except for Sunday. So we look forward to it. And next week, I think we got a special guest coming on the show as well. Next week, I think somebody's booked for next week. If not, we'll have somebody. But stay tuned for what we have coming up next. And until we see each other again, you guys have a great weekend. And ta-tas.